It's The Log. I'm Charles Purcell. So you know how on this program we've been calling Mike Pence Bobblehead Mike. That's what we call him, and it's for, I don't know, forever we've been calling him that. Certainly at least since the coronavirus task force first started giving briefings. I know for sure we were doing it then. And he got the name Bobblehead Mike because of the way he stands behind his boss, and his head bobs up and down. It's just constantly, oh yeah, he's got the Mike Pence a little squint in his eye, purse the lips, tilt the head a little bit, and look very earnest, furrow the brow, and then bob that head up and down in agreement to anything the Orange Menace says. And ever since then, we've referred to him as Bobblehead Mike. Well, life imitating art. I'm still convinced that the whole world listens to this program, and we have a major influence. We're the butterfly in this chaotic world. And sure enough, there is a bobblehead now. Mike Pence has a bobblehead, and I like this story as well because it's got a Milwaukee connection. You know, I'm talking to you from the River West neighborhood in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. River West, the greatest neighborhood in the world. The National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum, located right here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, has produced a Mike Pence bobblehead depicting the moment that the biblical fly descended on his white crown. So it's his little desk there, and it's Mike with the tilted head looking down, and there's the fly. And, of course, the plexiglass shield. We have a Mike Pence and his fly bobblehead. The collectible sells for $25. This is not a plug. It's just a report. Yeah, from the National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum here in Milwaukee. $25. Pre-orders are being taken right now. The Biden-Harris campaign ought to get on this somehow. Buy up, a million of them and give them away as gifts to donors. Just like PBS gives away tote bags. Yep, donate. Donate $1,000 and get your own autographed Mike Pence bobblehead. It also includes, if you buy the bobblehead, it also includes a mini fly swatter. Joe Biden's presidential campaign also cashed in on Pence and his visitor by selling $10 customized fly swatters on its website to support the Democratic ticket. They reported selling 15,000 by Thursday morning. So by yesterday morning, they'd already sold 15,000 commemorative mini fly swatters. Promoting violence, though. You don't want to swat flies. You want to shoo them away. Shoo fly, don't bother me. So, okay, it's official. And again, life imitating art. Everybody's listening to our show. Bobblehead Mike has now been made manifest into the real world. Oh, speaking of Biden, let's get this out of the way so I don't have to bump it again. On Wednesday, we talked about Joe Biden's speech from Gettysburg, and the conversation went way over. It went too long, and I had to cut it. I had to cut part of it. So I was going to play the edited section we cut yesterday for you. But then we got all involved with the vice presidential debate and didn't get on to anything else. And so it got bumped again. So if I don't do it today, it's never going to happen. So what you're going to hear now is first me from yesterday explaining this, and then the original edited section from Wednesday. Yesterday, I was recommending to you that you go back and listen to the Tuesday afternoon Joe Biden speech that he delivered from Gettysburg. It was pretty good. It was surprisingly good. He delivered it very well. It was written very well. He makes a lot of historical references, being there in Gettysburg and citing Abraham Lincoln and the Civil War, and especially as it relates to our current time and political divisions and healing the nation and, this great divide. It was a very good speech. And one of the reasons I was kind of pleased with it is the very fact that people on his team wrote the speech. It appears that he's got a pretty good team if they can pull that off. So anyway, we were talking about that yesterday, and we ran out of time, and I had to cut it out of yesterday's show. So I thought I'd play that for you right now. This was some conversation about Joe Biden from yesterday's show that was cut out because we ran out of time. And it's a moving speech. It's full of substance. Hits all the right chords. You got to give the guy credit. And again, more than that, he's got a team. And I always say this, you got to think about if you're choosing a candidate, look at the people around them. I'd be much happier actually if they actually ran as a team. Who's ever running for president, put yourself forward as the captain of the team. But put the whole team forward. All the advisors, the people who are going to fill the cabinet, put them right out front. Say, this is our team. I think that would be healthier. Because as it is, we kind of fetishize, right? We fetishize these candidates. And we infuse them with all of our hopes and dreams. And then we have to sanctify them and canonize them. And once you fetishize something, you can no longer be objective. You can no longer be critical. And that's always, I think, always important, but it's especially important this year because if you're somebody who's decided to vote for Joe, but you're going to battle him on day one of his presidency, that's what I've been advocating for. If you're somebody who's going to vote for him, make the vow to fight him starting day one because we're going to need that. I'm going to recommend something else. This goes back a couple of weeks. Let's see, published Wednesday, September 23rd. By Common Dreams. All right, commondreams.org. Find this. You know what? I'll share this one too. I got to make a note here. Open letter, dump Trump, then battle Biden. That's a very nice little pithy headline. 55 progressive writers and activists with a message for 2020 voters by Noam Chomsky, Barbara Ehrenreich, and others. Okay, so every progressive you can name has written an open letter basically saying this. They're asking you to vote for Biden, and they're asking you then, as soon as he wins, get on his ass and make sure that he is on the right side of history with health care, on the climate crisis, on government election reform. So vote for him and then fight him. It's exactly what I've been saying, and I'm going to recommend that you read this. Chomsky, Ehrenreich, and others, 55 progressives on why you should dump Trump and then battle Biden. It's exactly the right attitude to have. If you're somebody who's decided to vote for Joe, there you go. That's what you got to do. I mean, come on, there's still some holdouts. Do you have to be too cool for school? Let me read you a quote here. Here's a progressive. Let me read you this quote. The election will ask us not so much to vote for the best candidate, but to vote for or against ourselves. And to vote for ourselves, I think, means that we will have to campaign for and vote for Biden. Who's that? That is none other than Angela Davis. Now, are you cooler than Angela Davis? Are you more woke than Angela Davis? Are you more leftist than Angela Davis? Are you more revolutionary than Angela Davis? Come on. Seriously. Not having that. Nope, not having that at all. All right, so there you are. So that puts a button on that right there. We've had our Joe conversation. Yeah. Oh my God, the whole Michigan domestic terrorist plotting to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. Lord mercy, come on, you guys. Jameel Hill writes, just imagine the reaction if it would have been discovered that anyone connected to Black Lives Matter was plotting to kidnap a United States governor. Yeah, sometimes the most obvious thoughts need to be expressed and need to be amplified. Just imagine the reaction from the media, the reaction from the Orange Menace and Bootlicker Bill Barr, that whole side from all. Imagine the response from all the deplorables if it was someone who identified as Antifa or someone connected with Black Lives Matter. They would just be going out of their minds. It would be 24/7 coverage. And yeah, now today, nothing. Nothing at all from the right-wingers about this. Crickets. Well, speaking of Black Lives Matter, I don't even want to talk about this, but we have to. We have to. So you could just write the script on this stuff. It's so predictable. Another case of a cop shooting a young black man, a boy really. 17-year-old Alvin Cole shot dead in an incident with police. And for those of you outside Milwaukee, you might not have heard about this story. It happened right here in one of our inner ring suburbs, Wauwatosa. If you're seeing that town in print today, that's how it's pronounced, Wauwatosa. And it's a horrible place of white privilege. You couldn't pay me $1 million to live in Wauwatosa. So a police officer by the name of Joseph Mensah shot and killed Alvin Cole. And in a scene we've seen 100 times now, the authorities have to decide whether or not to charge the killer. And in anticipation of the announcement, Wauwatosa locked down on Wednesday. They rolled up the sidewalks. They closed everything early on Wednesday. They locked everything up. They boarded up the windows with big sheets of plywood and announced a 7 p.m. curfew, all prior to the announcement. So what happens? Well, you can tell me what happened because everybody knows, again, this is so predictable. We've seen this script 100 times now. The announcement comes. Of course, he's not going to be charged. The officer not going to be charged with the killing of 17-year-old Alvin Cole. Led by his family, his mother and 2 sisters, and others, of course, they hit the streets on Wednesday in defiance of the curfew to march and protest. Well, what else are you going to expect? Of course they did that. And again, you can write this script. I'm sure you're ahead of me. Peaceful protesters, violent agitators. A very small group decided to take advantage of the situation, break some windows, cause some trouble for God knows what reasons. Because they're jackasses, because they just get off on it. Maybe they're white supremacists, maybe they're boogaloos or 3%ers or self-proclaimed militia kids from Illinois. Who knows who they are? So as we go down this very familiar script, Wednesday night, that's all the press coverage. That's all we're seeing on the TV. Broken windows, people running around acting a fool, not really seeing the peaceful protesters much at all because that doesn't make for good TV. And the arrests that happen are for 2 things. Failure to disperse and violating the curfew, something that they just sort of invented and put in place hours prior. Okay, let's create a law and then arrest people on it. So there was no need to arrest peaceful protesters. Just let them march. Let them yell. If you want to bring the cops out, fine. Come out to protect the protesters. That's what you're here for. Protect and serve. If you want to protect local businesses from getting their windows knocked out, fine. You got 1 million cops all pimped out in their riot gear. Go ahead and form a nice line. Stand in front of the businesses and protect the businesses as you just watch the protesters march by, protected by you, chanting their chants, singing their songs. But no, in this damn remake that keeps getting made over and over again, in this script that is so unoriginal, you have to attack the protesters. Once again, cops are inciting violence. And it's tear gas, and it's rubber bullets, and it's flash bombs. Aren't we getting tired of this movie? Nothing had to happen. Nothing. And then in a new little twist, we do have one new little twist in this sequel. Now it's Thursday night, the second night of protests. Once again, they declare a curfew to give them an excuse to arrest people. Protests on Thursday night are much smaller. They are almost entirely peaceful. One or two incidents of ragtag troublemakers that could easily be taken care of by a police force that looks like it came straight out of Thunderdome. But no, they're not satisfied. They've got to go after the protesters. And live stream video shows police violently dragging people out of their cars, slamming them to the street. Go ahead and look at the video. It's right there for you. Live streamed for the world to see. Arresting people for nothing else except violating a 7 p.m. curfew. And here's the twist. Among those arrested, Jacob Blake Sr., the father of Jacob Blake Jr., who was shot 7 times in Kenosha, Alvin Cole's sisters, and Alvin Cole's mother, Tracy Cole. Dragged out of her car in a parking lot. The Facebook live stream that captured audio of Tracy Cole was made by a third daughter. On the recording, Tracy Cole could be heard screaming in pain as she was being arrested, saying police injured her arm, hit her in the head, and used a stun gun on her. "I'm Alvin Cole's mother," Tracy Cole screamed repeatedly as officers pulled her out of her car. "I can't believe y'all did this to me. Y'all killed my son," she screamed at the officers. "I can't breathe," she said multiple times. "I can't breathe." Tracy Cole said her head was bleeding and she believed her arm was broken, according to the live stream. Wauwatosa police tweeted Thursday night that, quote, several people were arrested, and said one woman requested medical attention and was taken to a hospital. So there, if you're looking for a little twist to this familiar script, yeah, they broke the arm of the victim's mother, dragging her out of a car for violating a 7 p.m. curfew. The cops are the bad guys. There is no good cop. Abolish the police. Are you telling me that if you didn't want to handle this properly, you couldn't have done it? A police force your size, with, by the way, I hadn't even mentioned, we had the full military complement out there. We had the National Guard, we had the Hummers, we had the mini tanks. They had the whole paraphernalia out there. You telling me with all of that you couldn't protect against a few broken windows? That's really your primary concern? A couple of broken windows? Fine. Guard your windows. Let the people march. Let them have their constitutional right to assemble and to shout and to yell. What is your problem? There are no good cops in an unjust system. It's not possible. Every damn police force across this country, in every hamlet, village, and town, needs to be dismantled and replaced with something entirely new. The very idea, the very concept of the modern police force needs to be abolished. And in a phrase that's becoming one of my favorites, needs to be crushed under the boot of history. Jesus. Well, let me change topics entirely and close with this today. I don't think I've ever spoken with you about this, but I have an arch enemy out in the podcast world, in Radioland. I have an arch enemy, and his name is Guy Raz. Are you familiar with Guy Raz? He hosts a program on NPR called How I Built This, and he interviews entrepreneurs. Not the 9 out of 10 that fail. No. He interviews the 1 out of 10 who succeed, and from that 1%, the 0.01%, the ones who get really rich. And he interviews them and puts their stories forward as some great kind of motivational, inspirational how-to story of how you too, with perseverance, can succeed. And I stumbled upon this program because I'm an NPR guy. I listen a lot. There's some good things on NPR. The weekends are really kind of hinky, though. And so this is a weekend show. And so it's NPR, so I'm listening. And I suddenly realized that this feels really weird. Talking to some mucky muck of some big corporation who invented a new kind of suitcase or something. And Guy Raz has him on for like the full program in this extended interview to hear the guy's life story and how he did it. Oh, how did you succeed as an entrepreneur? And invariably, the person being interviewed is so damn privileged and completely unaware of it. So, how'd you get started? Oh, well, I had absolutely nothing. It was a real rags to riches kind of story, Guy. It was my senior year at Harvard, and I decided to join my parents, who were vacationing in Rome at the time, and we saw this street peddler on one of our little jaunts who had invented a whole new concept for carry-on bags. And he was doing a brisk little business out in his little kiosk. And so he steals the idea from this little Italian guy. Mummy and Daddy give him $500,000 seed capital, and he winds up making $1 billion and expands his business into a whole line of travel products and makes a gazillion more dollars. And everybody's supposed to be so inspired by this story. Oh, isn't it wonderful? Isn't American entrepreneurial spirit the most wonderful thing ever handed down to by God? So I'm listening to this program and thinking, how bad can this get? And so every week, here's this show again. I kept running into it. So I thought, okay, well, I'll give it another chance. It can't be as bad as last week. And every week it's the same. Stories presented as great inspiration. And the obvious privilege, and both the guest and the host so completely blind to the privilege. And everyone I've heard follows the same kind of story. They have investors, they have money, they steal ideas. Well, I bring this up because I stumbled on him again. He's out there doing a book tour now because he's got a book based on these interviews. How I Built This by Guy Raz, my archenemy. So he's created this whole sort of brand. I remember being very suspicious about this program the second I heard the title. You know about How I Built This, right? You know where that expression comes from? In a 2012 speech by Barack Obama, he was talking about how we all have a responsibility to work for the common good. And, Barack Obama was this kind of perfect centrist, right? So he's singing the praises of entrepreneurs, people who build businesses. But he's pointing out that the police force that protects them and the roads that transports their goods and the electricity that powers their factories, all of this is part of the commons. All of this created by the cities, states, and country where they do business. Governments, regulations, other people are contributing to your success. And in his sunshiny way, which, good for him, he's just pointing out that we're all in this together. And that you, Mr. Business Owner, are benefiting from this great cooperative. And as such, we all have a responsibility to pay back, to acknowledge what's been provided to us. And the fundamental central component of the democratic centrist, yeah, you got to pay some taxes and you should be happy to do it. That was the very innocuous, very non-controversial point he was making. But he had a turn of phrase that his enemies jumped on. Quoting now from the speech. Somebody helped to create this unbelievable American system that we have, that allowed you to thrive. Somebody invested in roads and bridges. If you've got a business, you didn't build that. Referring, of course, to the roads and the bridges. You didn't build the roads and the bridges. But that unfortunate phrasing was co-opted by his enemies, and they just took the last part of that sentence. If you've got a business, you didn't build that. So that was central to their campaign for the whole rest of the 2012 campaign season, culminating with Mitt Romney at the Republican National Convention, where they spent an entire night. They devoted an entire night of that shortened convention. You may remember it was shortened by a hurricane. But they still devoted an entire night to, you built this. And they kept quoting Barack Obama in every speech, in every campaign flyer. If you've got a business, you didn't build that. So just a blatant and shameless lie to totally distort the meaning of what he said, and then building a whole campaign around, yeah, you built this. So when I heard Guy Raz's show called How I Built This, I mean, come on. That's not a coincidence. That is not a coincidence. That's a mindset. That's an ethos. That's a political statement. How I built this. How I built this. And now he's got a book, and he's out hawking it. Yeah. Not having it. Guy Raz is my mortal enemy. We're having a radio feud. Guy Raz, your turn. Say what you will about me. Go ahead, have at it. Yeah, I want to incite a good old-fashioned radio feud, just like Jack Benny had with Fred Allen back in the day. If you're a fan of old-time radio, Jack Benny and Fred Allen, and they were actually friends, and it was a bit. But they had the greatest feud going. They'd insult each other, and it was kind of wonderful. So, Guy Raz, I challenge you to a radio feud. Okay, let's call it a day. Let's call it a week. God, every week, man. Every week just gets weirder and weirder. What is going to happen next week? Get out your Ouija boards. Let's figure this one out. Hey, did you hear we're going to have a full moon on Halloween coming up in a couple of weeks here? Full moon. So buckle up, everybody. All right. This is The Log, available on Apple Podcasts and wherever you get your podcasts. Just a reminder, when you look for it, search Charles Purcell, because Charles Purcell Presents is the umbrella term under which all the podcasts fall. So that's how you have to do that. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio, riverwestradio.com. Theme music composed and performed by Peter Donalds. Please reach out to me. I'm easy to find at charlespurcell.com. All right, there it is. See ya.